Hi there, my name's TheTrueNev, I'm the only me there is, and welcome back to the Satisfactory Non-Series, Episode 2. I don't even know how I'm gonna name these, but let's head right into it, and starting off, I gotta say, I finally got the conveyor belt system working, and some factories pumping out the base materials that will be heading into the awesome sink. And at this point, just so you can see, it has been about 6 hours since the point where I left off in the last video, and I've been working hard to get this, well, working. And as you can see, the coupons, well, their gain is exponential, meaning that it starts out at like 2,000 and then the number grows for each coupon. And ultimately, each material offers a base amount, but the starting materials are not very good for it. Now, I'm going to keep this running until much later because 16 coupons is simply not enough, and instead go ahead and show you the progress I've made so far. So starting out, as you can see, I expanded a bit more of the foundation, and I started creating a lot more factories on each of the towers. I've started elevating the resources, and as I already mentioned, crafting the most basic materials, cables, wires, iron rods, iron screws, and so on and so forth. Some are taller than others, as you can see over there. I got most of them working, though I don't know exactly what to do with one of them, but we'll figure that out as we go along. As you can see, the massive conga line extends out this way, all the way to the very end, where also I've started to work on a secondary super large structure, which is where I'm at the end of the line transporting copper sheets, as well as elevating the 2 iron nodes for, well, the plan I have for this area. And don't you worry about the holes you see here, because there's a plan for that. There's a plan for that, and it involves the tickets, and I'm gonna be very happy when this place is complete. But as you can see, I've already started working heavily on it. You know, I planned out the ramps, I planned out everything. Here we have a nice little conveyor belt mess heading into the upper area of the factory, and the game chooses to remind me that I've been playing for 2 hours at this point, even though it's been way longer than that. Because as I mentioned before, most of what goes into these episodes is planning. A lot of hours of planning and constructing and deconstructing, just making sure everything is alright. Here we have an extra bit of storage because I managed to, with 1 pure node, make 3 outputs for the copper sheets, which is very nice. On the other side, I've started production of iron ingots, but I haven't connected it up yet because I'd rather finish the top part first, which includes what I have in mind for it. And what I have in mind is production of reinforced iron plates and rotors. And this time for my own storage and not for the massive conga line back there. Now fast forward a bit, a few hours later, and here I am, and this is where I've been. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I would actually like to show you the progress I've made so far. To that end, I'm going to build this small ladder here, using the infamous and the controversial ladder sequence I showed in the last episode to show you. Here we go. See, this is the way I organized it, and I love the way it came out, and it's going to look beautiful in the very end. But so that you understand what is exactly going on here, you gotta know that I calculated these maths perfectly. Between the 2 normal nodes that transport the iron up, it equals a total of 120 iron ore. And with that iron ore, I can comfortably craft, and here I'm placing down the storage because I like having everything as neat and tidy as possible. I can comfortably craft both the rotors and the reinforced iron plates. Now, if you don't want this sort of thing happening to you, then here's a tip for you. Make it until the area where you want it to be straight, and then go 2 spaces back. That way you can ensure your curve is nice and smooth. See, just like that. I went 2 back and then in there. Boom, beautiful. So after seriously calculating how much materials I would need, I realized I would need at least 6 constructors. 4 creating iron rods and 2 creating iron plates. Why 2 for iron plates? Well, simple, because the reinforced iron plate assembler requires you to input at least 40 iron plates. And here I connect the system so that it can finally start working. That was just the final touches, as you can see. Now the other 4 that are creating iron rods are done that way so that I can take 2 outputs of iron rods and 2 other outputs of iron rods. The first 2 go into 3 extra constructors that will be making a total of 120 screws per minute, and the other 2 split. One converges into the other line again, and the other goes apart. In other words, I have one conveyor line with 20 and one with 10. The one with 10 is used to create an extra 40 screws, which is what's necessary to craft the exact number of screws for both assemblers to work, and while the other 20 iron rods go into the rotor assembler. And it seems I accidentally missed this one conveyor belt. I was like, wait, why isn't it processing all the screws? But okay, there we go. Now we got it going, and now everything should function accordingly. And there we go. Look at how beautiful it looks. Everything working accordingly. My math was flawless here. All that remains is to see the final product. And now that this factory is essentially done, I can get a move on into the next thing. Turns out though that I seriously underestimated just how much time, how long it would take to get the tickets to finish the coal power plant, which is my first big main objective, as I said last time. So while I wait for these materials to craft and create and whatever and whatnot, so I can start working on the next big project, let's head into the next area, which is here. Now here I have my factory in a pure iron node that was basically making reinforced iron plates before. Now that I've got another factory actually dedicated to that, I can move this one up for the next big plan I have. Since I got the math working last time, I knew I could make it work again. In this case, I gotta remove all this so I can actually get it flowing upward. Because I like my things to be nice and square and tidy and on a grid, here is a bit of the process I go through to make sure everything is as straight as possible. First, I extend the platform out as far as I can so that it doesn't overlap with any of the factories. Then I make a bit of a base floor, enough so that it works out the way I want it to. And then I extend my conveyor belt to as straight as result as it can be. Ever since I made this coal power plant and realized just how tall it was, I knew I wanted to do something a little special, which was have one section like this one up ahead where all the materials, or in this case the iron ore, would pass under the factory in a bit of a messy yet really industrial looking kind of way. As you can see here, I'm setting up the conveyor belt, and I left the hole on purpose under the very foundation that holds up the coal power plants so that it could pass under. And there's really no reason for this except that I really like the way it looks. And now that I have the iron ore set up over here, as you can see, I've built some extra foundations on where it's going to go. This next building is where I'm going to be creating frames, because I need 50 of them for basic steel production. And as I said before, the math works out perfectly. With 120 ore from a single pure node, I can actually make it work just fine. And here you see the very tedious part, that is me placing down all the smelters and constructors and basically figuring out how I want everything to go. Because as you know, or if you don't know, then let me inform you, I'm a very space-conscious person. I like things to be pretty and apart and on the grid. And sometimes that means factories will be apart unnecessarily, like up there with the coal power plants, yet other times it means they'll have to be put very much close together. But since I still like to make sure everything looks nice and is as tidy as possible, a lot of the time really just goes into planning out how I want things to go, how I need them placed, in order to get things functioning as efficiently as possible. And the hours that pass are mostly spent doing that. You know, while I wait for materials to create, I might as well make sure the factories look as I want them to, with nice smooth curves between conveyor belts, proper positioning, making sure there's space to walk, making sure there's uniform space between factories and the conveyor belt, and so on and so forth. And after about an hour or so of planning things out, making sure the space was right, I realized, hey, I can't get this to fit in a single layer, so I'm gonna have to elevate it. Which meant actually deleting what I had at this time and starting from scratch. But starting from scratch isn't that bad either, because it lets me see things as they should be. Of course, once on the second floor, there are so many constructors, just like in the other superstructure, that I cannot leave it on a second floor either, meaning that I had to do something I didn't want to do, but ultimately was forced to, which was, again, find a way to transport things onto a third floor, where there I could start making the frames. The process of making sure everything fits nicely and according to my vision is a long and tedious one, but it's well worth it in the end. Once I set the correct height and managed to get all the conveyors to their proper positions, in other words, where they need to go in order to transport to the top, nice and orderly, I started to work on the last section, where 2 manufacturers would go. One for the reinforced iron plates and the other for the frames, and that's because the frame requires at least 3 reinforced iron plates. And I'm not gonna lie, the hardest part here was actually making sure everything fit well, because once you start improvising, which this in part kind of was, it starts getting a little complicated. And by complicated, I mean the actual conveyor belt positioning. It turns into such a spaghettification that you don't know if it's ever going to work out, but then when it does, it feels so good. And sometimes you have to reinvent things, reinvent the ways you wanted things to go, but in the end, if you're smart about it, then things work out. Of course, the last stage is just putting the power on. That's pretty annoying too, but it can be done fairly quickly. And this is where I gotta say that I'm out of time. I wanted to go on a little longer, but I didn't want to overextend myself. So once again, I must say that I severely underestimated just how long it would take to get all the tickets. So yeah, I leave this second episode here for now, with a lot more progress done, and a lot more progress coming in the future. I have plenty of plans, there's plenty of nodes to get to, plenty to construct, but the power plant will not be done yet. For now, this is a transitionary episode. Take it as you will, and if you enjoyed this episode, then please thumb or so with that like button down below, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell button for some sweet notifications. But as always, I'm the only me, so you be the only you. See you in the next episode.